Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. I am your sister Aisha. Welcome to my channel, Manifest Your Brilliance, a Muslim's guide to living and leaving a legacy. Yes, I am still wearing the same hoodie. If you guys watched my first video, the basics, the 101 to Islam, I already let y'all know. Your girl is not changing to make y'all think that I recorded this video at another time, at another day, at another place. No, at least not for this. At least not for this series. I'm really just trying to get consistent with my content and want to share the information with you guys. So in this video, I'm going to talk about, I guess it's called story time. I'm going to talk about my conversion story and how I became Muslim. So it's kind of a long story. There's a lot of pieces that go to it, so bear with me. I will try not to be long, okay? So my first introduction to Islam was through my husband. So I met my husband in high school, 9th grade. And his line to try to get at me was, ooh, Aisha, do you know that's Prophet Muhammad's name? That's Prophet Muhammad's wife's name? I was like, Prophet who? I know about Jesus. I don't know about no Prophet Muhammad. That was my introduction to Islam. That was it. That was the end of that conversation. He was like, oh, your name's Aisha. Do you know Prophet Muhammad's wife's name is Aisha? I was like, nope. So my name is Arabic, which means life, but it's also Swahili, which also means life. Stevie Wonder wrote a song called Isn't She Lovely? Life is the meaning of her name. He named his daughter Aisha, which was written in 1977, which is why my mom gave me my name, because I was born in 1977. Yes, y'all, your girl is old. So that's how I got my name. Some Muslims choose to change their name. My name is what it is. I was born with it. Didn't change it. So, met hubby, 9th grade. He was telling me about Aisha, Prophet Muhammad's wife, so I saw him. Okay. I got married to my husband 5 or 6-ish years later. So, it was a little bit after high school. I was 19 when I got married. And apparently he had some friends that were Muslim. And they had given him a Quran as a gift. He knew about the Nation of Islam, didn't really know much about Sunni Islam, so I'll talk a little bit about that later. It's not important right now. We're sticking to the basics. So he had a Quran, and I thought, oh, that writing is really pretty. It sat in our bookshelf for 5 years. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. It sat next to our Torah and next to our Bibles. I was like, okay, cool. I like the writing, looks nice. So probably about 3 years into our marriage, so I think I was pregnant with our second son. I went on maternity leave and I did not plan to go back to work. That's gonna be another video. That's another story time. It's kind of a sad story. Okay, so I was on maternity leave and I had all this free time, and so I read a lot. And I've always been really interested in God, and I would ask questions in Sunday school growing up, and that was my favorite part. I hated church. I loved Sunday school because I got to read and ask questions. So I just started, like, for whatever reason, like, Allah put on my heart to just study. And I was like, you know, Judaism, in my mind, that's what I thought. I didn't know about Zoroastrian and all that stuff. Judaism was the first religion. It was the first scripture sent by God's people. So I started reading our Torah. And within a year of studying it, I was like, oh, everybody should be Jewish because this is the original religion. This is what everybody should be. Okay, so let me kind of back up a little bit, okay? So before that, I did study a little bit of like the Bible, and I would read the Bible from the beginning to the end. And I was raised Christian, so it wasn't really a lot of studying that I needed to do because I pretty much knew what I needed to know. But I started to question things like, my husband had highlighted in his Bible stuff like, be not the way of the heathen, for they take the tree and they nail it down, they decorate it in silver. I was like, oh, that sounds like Christmas. So I was like, heathens, those are ungodly like people. So I looked up the history of Christmas. I learned about that. I looked up the history of Halloween. I looked up the history of Easter. I used to watch the History Channel. I looked up the history of the Bible, and I didn't really know that there's a big connection between religion and history. So before reading the Torah, I really looked into the history of Christianity. And I wasn't really happy with what I found. I wasn't really satisfied with what I found because, and I've kind of learned this as a Muslim, the people were not doing what God's word said. So I read that the Bible said you're not supposed to eat pork, that women are supposed to cover their hair or shave it, stuff like that. But none of the Christians that I knew were doing any of those things. So I was like, you know, I don't think I want to be Christian. Now that was my own fault, because you should never follow a religion or believe based on the people. It should always be based on what God says, because people are imperfect. They are not going to do what they're supposed to do, which is why I said I would be a really good Christian now, is because I feel like I pretty much, like, it would be easy for me. There's things that are a little bit more strict in Islam that Christianity does not have. So I did those things. I did that research and had the information, and I was just basically saying, I don't have a religion. I believe in God, but religion is what I would call man-made. You know, I would say religion is what people made it. So I would say I didn't have a religion. I just believed in God. I was spiritual, is what I would tell people. So I started reading the Torah and learned about the Torah, and I was like, okay. I read Leviticus. It's all about food. I read, you know, it's called the laws. I read the laws of the Torah, and then I read Psalms, and then I read, you know, the rest of the Torah. And I noticed that the Torah is basically the Old Testament of the Bible. Very, very, very similar. But the biggest problem that I had when I read it is that, and also doing a little bit of information and asking questions of Jews that I knew that were on MySpace probably at the time, was they didn't believe in Jesus. And I was like, how y'all not believe in Jesus? They thought, or their belief was that Jesus was kind of a fictional character, like Santa Claus or something. They believe he just didn't exist, that he was a made-up person, or that he was like a false prophet. And to this day, a lot of Jews believe that they are still waiting for their Messiah. I wasn't in agreement with that. So I was like, okay, yeah, I can't be Jewish, because in my heart, I believe that Jesus is real. So I was like, okay, well, studied Christianity, studied Judaism, didn't really find what I was looking there. So I just kept studying. And so probably about 2 more years later, we had bought our first house. We were unpacking, and 2 guys with guns kicked in my front door. Yeah, 2 guys with guns kicked in my front door. That's all I remember. I think I kind of blacked out. I had like the worst PTSD. I couldn't stay in the house for probably like a month. And when my husband wasn't home during the day before it got dark, I would go to Walmart or something until he was home from work. I would not be in the house by myself. It took me months to be in the house by myself. So after I did a little bit of counseling and therapy and a little bit of kind of like, yeah, I would say counseling, but it was like on my own. It was like some, I guess you could say like transpersonal tapes that I listened to, which just talked about PTSD and that it's really all in your mind. After I had recovered from that, like there were times I would be in my backyard and hear something and I would get scared and grab my kids and go in the house. Like it was that bad. I would just hear a little something. It could be a cat or something in the bushes, but I was like on very high alert. So eventually, within a couple months, I was doing better. And I said, you know, I feel very, very grateful. You know, God protected us. We are here. Nobody was hurt. And after the guys kicked in my front door, they were like, oh, sorry, wrong house, and just left. This is the story that my husband tells me. I don't remember anything. I just remember 2 guys coming in and kicking the door. All the other details my husband tells me. I don't remember anything. I remember just sitting there. And there was like a wall in my house. So there's, you know how you go upstairs and there's a wall on one side of your stairs? I remember sitting on the side of the wall like this all the time. I would sit on the floor. I wouldn't sit where there were windows that were high enough because I thought they might come by and do a drive-through. I would sit on the side of that wall all the time. So I don't remember anything that happened. All I remember is 2 guys came and kicked in the front door. I was in my dining room unpacking boxes, putting dishes away. That's all I remember. I do remember the cops coming and asking me questions, and they were, irritated and frustrated, like being very rude, because I think I was probably in shock and I wasn't really answering their questions. And my uncle came and some family came and helped my husband fix the door for the night. And that's it. That's all I remember. So, let's see, I digress. So the door got kicked in, my kids were sleeping. So at that time I had 3 children. My children were sleeping in the room, like here's the living room, their bedroom was right here. So I said, you know, we are very blessed, nobody was hurt, I'm very grateful, and I want to show that appreciation to God. I want to give my appreciation, give my life to God. I need to be in a church, a mosque, a synagogue, or something, because I just felt like I owe God that much. I wanted to show him my gratefulness. And so I remember that there was a masjid around the corner, and it had a big old banner on the gate that said, "Want to learn about Islam? Come Tuesday nights at 7." So I was like, babe, I want to go over to this masjid. I had never been in a masjid before. I said, I want to go over there and see what it's about. So I went. There was this big, tall, not big, but like this really tall, like 6 foot something dude that was there in an office. And he was like, yeah, he was like smiling. He was like, yeah, we're so glad to see you. Welcome, blah, blah, blah. He gave us books. He gave us tapes. He gave us CDs. Like, he gave us everything he had, like prayer rugs. Wow, mashallah, we're so happy to see you. Welcome, blah, blah, to the community. Come on these days and we have sister halakas, and come on these days we got Arabic class, and come on these days we go feed the homeless, and come on these days we do da-da-da. I was like, wow, they have a lot going on. I was really, really impressed and very happy to be a part of this community. It was like no other church I had been to. It was a very, very small masjid. It was maybe 100 people there. And when you go in, I'll talk a little bit about the different masjids, and I'll record some videos of different masjids, especially if you're a new Muslim. It's good to see different masjids. So you go in, there was a curtain, and he was like, this side is for the men and this side is for the women, and the sisters pray over here with the kids and blah, blah. And I was like, that's different. We don't have that in church. You know, the guys kind of do sit by themselves, and the women kind of do sit by themselves, but husbands and wives sometimes sit together. But it wasn't a curtain or anything dividing. So I was like, interesting, okay. So I started going to these sister halakas and getting to know the sisters, and they would be reading different books together and trading hijabs and just talking and eating brunch and stuff together. And I was like, this is pretty cool. And then I was going and taking some Arabic classes, and I was learning my Arabic alphabet, and I took a beginner, like basic fiqh class with Dr. Ameen. May Allah be pleased with him. Like, he was one of my favorite teachers. So I started taking classes with him, and he taught a class on giving dawah, how to tell other people about Islam. And basically, he taught us how to teach basically the other video that I gave you guys. He was like, stick to the basics. It's the 5. That's all they need to know. After I took that class, this was like a year after being at the masjid, I learned how to pray. There was some very helpful sisters that were there. They taught me how to pray. They argued back and forth because I wore my hair kind of like in a turban, like you might see my pictures sometimes. And I had on like a turtleneck sometimes, but sometimes my neck wasn't covered. And they were like, no, she's fine, she's fine, she's fine. And I was already dressing modest, so I didn't eat pork. I was already covering my hair. I was already dressing modest because I had learned that in the Bible. So I was just going, and I was praying, learning how to pray, and I was praying, and I was going every Friday for Juma, and I was going for like everything. I was volunteering, I was feeding the homeless, and I was helping with the kids, and I was homeschooling my kids at the time. So it was just like, I was with the sisters all the time, and I just love that sense of community. So one day I had a couple of sisters at my house, and I was like, hey guys, I want to take my shahada. They were like, what you talking about? You want to take your shahada? You already took your shahada. You're Muslim. You don't need to take your shahada. And I was like, no, I haven't taken my shahada. And they're like, what? You've been chilling and hanging out with us for almost 2 years. You're not Muslim yet? They assumed that I was Muslim. And I was like, why did you guys think I was Muslim? They're like, well, you dress Muslim. You don't eat pork. And we assumed you were already Muslim. So only that guy I was there the first day, and probably his wife knew that I wasn't Muslim yet. Everybody else thought that I was Muslim just because I kind of looked the part. So I took my shahada in my living room at my house, and I became Muslim. And my shahada was given to me by, so I had a friend who lived on the street over. Her husband actually gave me my shahada. So inshallah, any good deeds that I do, he will be rewarded for them, and any good deeds that maybe you do because of me sharing, he will also be rewarded for them. So she gave me and he gave me my shahada, and I think my husband did it along with me at the same time. And basically that's pretty much how I became Muslim. It was just my desire to please God. A lot of people assume, oh, you're Muslim because you meet a guy that's Muslim and you convert to Islam, or you know, you're unhappy with your faith. I literally studied theology and different religions for a good 5 years before I decided to become Muslim. And I actually studied Islam and the basics of Islam and the fiqh of Islam and Arabic, and learned how to pray and all that, probably for about 2 years before I decided to take my shahada. And I won't say before I decided, like in my heart I already felt Muslim, but I didn't know that I needed to make it official. And that's why I say, like, I didn't get a lot of proper information, and I'm thinking maybe it's just because people just assumed. But I'm like, if I'm learning how to pray and I'm taking classes with you guys learning how to pray, you should assume that I'm not Muslim, or I don't, you know, really know much. So that's it, guys. That is my story time about how I became Muslim. So I will see you guys in the next video.